This is India, a rising tech giant, a spacefaring power, a billion-person democracy. But behind the headlines is rot. Today, we'll reveal the 7 ugliest cultural truths pulling India toward ruin. One failure, one excuse, one national lie at a time. And by the end, you won't be asking if India is falling. You'll be asking how it's still standing. Because this isn't just about poverty or population. It's about a society where superstition overrides science, where caste can kill, where rivers sacred enough to worship are toxic enough to kill, and where pride in the past is used to justify dysfunction in the present. This is cultural collapse, slow, stubborn, and self-inflicted. Let's expose the 7 ugly truths, starting with the one India's own elites pretend doesn't exist. Here's what hits you first when you arrive: the smell. Delhi's air has become a gas chamber. During winter months, pollution levels soar to hazardous extremes, forcing schools to close, flights to divert, and residents to flee if they can afford it. Mumbai's beaches are graveyards of plastic. The Ganges, India's holiest river, carries not just prayers but untreated sewage from dozens of cities, industrial waste, and corpses. India has 7 of the world's 10 most polluted cities. Not 7 out of 100, 7 out of 10. In 2019, India accounted for 22 of the 30 worst cities globally for air pollution. Air pollution is estimated to cause over 2 million premature deaths in India each year. That's a catastrophic toll repeated annually. Deaths from heart disease, stroke, lung cancer, respiratory infections. The World Bank calculated that air pollution alone cost India 8.5% of GDP in lost output and health expenditures. But it's not just the air. Indian cities generate over 170,000 tons of solid waste every day. Half of it is mismanaged, dumped in open landfills or burned in streets, releasing toxic fumes. Delhi's biggest landfill is so massive that satellite data identified it as a significant global emitter of methane. Mountains of garbage, some the height of multi-story buildings, smolder across the country. This isn't a developing nation's growing pains. This is a retreat from civilization itself. The state has abandoned its most basic duty, keeping the commons livable. Municipal systems are overwhelmed or incompetent. Regulations exist on paper but vanish in practice. And citizens, they've normalized chaos. When trash piles up everywhere and smog chokes your lungs, you stop caring. You litter because everyone does it. The state doesn't clean, so why should you? It's a vicious cycle of decay. Historically, societies that found their own nest collapsed. The Maya contributed to their downfall through deforestation and water mismanagement. Ancient civilizations that couldn't manage waste faced disease outbreaks and depopulation. India is repeating the pattern. But here's the twisted part. This environmental horror isn't the worst thing killing Indians every day. Look closer at the streets. India's roads are slaughterhouses. In 2024 alone, around 180,000 people were killed in road accidents. That's nearly 500 deaths every single day. It's the equivalent of a fully loaded jetliner crashing daily with no survivors. Yet it barely registers as a crisis. People drive without seatbelts. Families of 5 cram onto motorcycles. Vehicles overload and speed with impunity. Lanes and traffic signals are treated as suggestions, not laws. Fatal traffic chaos is just normal. The state has abdicated its responsibility to enforce basic order. Every day, citizens gamble with their lives, navigating collapsing sidewalks, open electrical wiring, hazardous construction sites. Survival is personal luck, not state protection. Western visitors watch in horror as buses careen past crowds and pedestrians dash across expressways. How is this legally allowed? They ask. It's allowed because India has normalized danger. This isn't a policy failure. It's a civilizational red flag. History shows that nations destined for greatness do the opposite. Early 20th century America responded to chaotic automobile traffic with licensing, speed limits, stoplights. Imperial Rome built guarded roads. Modern China enforces traffic laws strictly. They understood when the state can't protect citizens during a routine commute, it signals a breakdown. Here's the irony that'll make your head spin. The Indus Valley civilization on this same soil 4,500 years ago built well-planned streets and drainage systems for safe, healthy cities. Modern India can't keep its roads drivable. A civilizational regression from 2000 BCE. And the ones who survive the roads? They face a healthcare system that's barely functional. About 50% of all Indian villagers have zero access to modern healthcare. Not limited access, zero. Half the country lives in rural areas where doctors, clinics, and medicines are desperately scarce. Government-run health centers meant to serve the poor are chronically understaffed and under-resourced. 10% have no doctors or nurses present at all. 40% lack a laboratory technician. The outcome is predictable and tragic. 10% of Indian babies don't survive to see their first birthday. Those who do, about half of all rural children, are likely to be permanently stunted from malnutrition and poor health in infancy. This isn't 19th century data, this is 2024. Diseases that are easily preventable or treatable, diarrhea, respiratory infections, malaria, still kill over 2 million Indians each year. Now here's what makes this even more inexcusable. India's government spends less than 2% of GDP on public health care, among the lowest levels in the world. For comparison, most developed countries spend 6 to 9% of GDP. Even peer nations like Vietnam and Indonesia spend 3 to 5%. The result? Government hospitals are overcrowded, dilapidated hellholes. Patients sleep in hallways, two to a bed. Families travel all night from villages only to wait hours for a 5-minute consultation. And if you're seriously ill, you go into debt or die trying. Each year, millions of Indian families are pushed into extreme poverty by medical expenses. But here's the part that reveals the rot. Private hospitals boom in major cities, charging exorbitant fees. Medical tourism thrives. India has world-class surgeons for those who can pay. It's a two-track nation eating itself from within. Around 42% of Indian children were underweight in 2012, a figure the then Prime Minister called the national shame. While that ratio has improved slightly, child malnutrition in India remains among the worst on the planet. When half your population is malnourished or sick, how can you sustain growth? No country has become a superpower while holding its masses in poor health. The United States, Europe, even China lifted their populations through massive public health investments. India's trajectory resembles countries that stagnated, where a small elite thrives while the masses remain trapped. But those masses? Half of them live in constant fear. India's women face a war zone disguised as daily life. In 2022, there were 445,256 reported crimes against women. That's nearly 500,000 cases in 1 year. And those are just what got reported. A woman is raped every 15 minutes in India, according to government data. Every 15 minutes. High-profile gang rape cases periodically ignite outrage. Protests erupt, hashtags trend, then silence. Because the day-to-day reality for Indian women is a barrage of smaller indignities and dangers that never make headlines. Lewd comments on buses, groping in crowds, being followed home. The very real fear of venturing out alone after dark. Many families impose curfews and dress codes on daughters for their safety. Women navigate an obstacle course of precaution simply to study or work. They share locations constantly. They avoid certain routes, certain times, certain neighborhoods entirely. Public space in India is overwhelmingly masculine. Women's visibility and mobility are limited by both fear and social norms. And here's the economic devastation this causes. Female labor force participation in India is among the lowest in the world. Only 0.3% of Indian women aged 15 or older are working or looking for work. Compare that to over 60% in China or 55% in the United States. The irony? Indian women are increasingly educated. Gender gaps in school enrollment have narrowed. Urban women earn college and professional degrees. Then they drop out of the workforce after marriage. Why? Because social norms, especially in conservative regions, discourage women from working alongside men. There's stigma around working women unless the job fits culturally accepted roles. The result? Women contribute only 18% of India's GDP, despite being 48% of the population. Nearly half the country's talent is going untapped. Economists estimate that bridging this gender gap could boost India's GDP by 25 to 30%. McKinsey projected India could add $770 billion by 2025 if women participated at the same rate as men. These are not abstract numbers. That's better living standards, more innovation, a broader tax base. But beyond economics, there's a human cost. When women are excluded, the country loses their leadership and perspectives in every field. India ranks 131 out of 148 countries on Global Gender Gap Index. That puts it alongside much poorer or conflict-ridden nations. No aspirant superpower wants to leave that league table. And while half the population lives in fear, the other half, they live in filth that shouldn't exist in the 21st century. Mass public defecation. Even with recent improvements under the Swachh Bharat Clean India mission, the practice persists due to infrastructure gaps and cultural habits. The consequences are severe. Open defecation contaminates water sources and spreads diseases like diarrhea, cholera, typhoid. It's a major reason Indian children suffer high rates of stunting and mortality. UNICEF reports show that in communities with widespread open defecation, even children who get enough food remain malnourished due to constant infection. As of about a decade ago, around 50% of India's population still defecated in the open. In rural areas, over one-third of households had no access to any toilet. Women and children had to go in fields or near homes, often waiting for pre-dawn darkness for privacy. This exposes women to harassment and assault. Studies found that even when toilets were built, many weren't used. Some men preferred the morning ritual of walking to fields. From an institutional standpoint, this reveals a governance failure at multiple levels. Cities like Delhi and Mumbai have grown to tens of millions without adequate sewage infrastructure. Vast informal settlements have no toilets, or just a few per thousand people. Building codes require toilets exist. Millions of dwellings ignore them. Here's the part that'll blow your mind. An ancient civilization that built covered drains. The Indus Valley cities had advanced sewer systems 4,500 years ago, now struggles to provide latrines. India in the 21st century has regressed on sanitation from standards that existed in 2000 BCE. That's not just failure, that's civilizational slippage. Sanitation is one of the most fundamental tasks of organized society. The Romans engineered aqueducts and public latrines. 19th century cities built sewer networks after pandemics nearly shut them down. If a state can't collect and dispose of human waste safely, it signals breakdown of both competence and collective will. The government reportedly built over 100 million toilets in the past decade. Many regions have been declared open defecation free. But independent surveys sometimes find these toilets unused, broken, or that open defecation has resumed due to lack of water or maintenance. True victory requires not just construction, but education, maintenance, cultural change. And cultural change hits a wall when there's a deeper rot underneath. Because everything gets stolen first. Corruption in India isn't a problem, it's a way of life. From petty bribes demanded by office clerks to multi-billion-dollar scams at the highest levels, graft has seeped into the cultural fabric. More than 60% of Indians have paid a bribe to a public official at least once in their lives, according to Transparency International. Whether it's to register property, get a driver's license, secure school admission, or obtain a death certificate, graft greases every bureaucratic gear. On Transparency International's Corruption Perceptions Index, India ranked 96th out of 180 countries in 2024 with a dismal score of 38 out of 100. That places it far below developed nations and many other emerging economies. Year after year, watchdog reports note that corruption remains endemic in India's public sector. It touches all levels of government, from village officials to ministers and CEOs. Scandals erupt regularly. Defense contracts, infrastructure projects, mining deals, telecom licenses, all tainted by kickbacks and favoritism. Public funds meant for poverty alleviation or rural employment are siphoned off by middlemen. This culture of corruption has devastating consequences. Economically, it acts as an invisible tax, inflating cost and deterring investment. Corruption costs India tens of billions of dollars annually in stunted growth. Socially, it corrodes the rule of law and breeds inequality. The rich and connected pay bribes for faster service or bent rules. The poor suffer delays or arbitrary denials. Justice is compromised when police and courts can be influenced. It's not uncommon to hear students quip that nothing gets done without paying someone under the table. That resignation is toxic for democracy. When people believe the system is rigged, they disengage or find extra-legal workarounds. Institutions weaken further. From a historical perspective, pervasive corruption is a classic harbinger of decline. The late Roman Empire was plagued by officials who took bribes and sold offices, eroding administrative competence. China's Han Dynasty saw chronic corruption among magistrates siphon resources and weaken state capacity, contributing to collapse. In India, corruption means highways built with substandard materials that crumble, bridges that collapse because contractors paid off inspectors, ration cards that never reach those who need them because middlemen skim. Corruption systematically steals prosperity from the nation's future and awards it to a venal few in the present. And the result of all of this theft? A permanent underclass that keeps growing. India is home to 1/3 of the world's extreme poor. Despite decades of development, hundreds of millions of Indians still survive on incomes that fail to meet basic needs. By the World Bank's benchmarks, around 5.3% of Indians live in extreme poverty, under $3 per day. But 23.9% live on less than $4.20 a day. That's the real deprivation line for an aspiring middle-income country. The poorest regions stretch across the heartland: eastern Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Jharkhand, Odisha, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan. Villages caught in a time warp. Illiteracy remains high. Child malnutrition is rampant. Infrastructure like roads, electricity, clean water is often missing. Families of 5 or 6 live in single mud brick rooms, eking out survival from subsistence farming or day labor. No safety net against illness or crop failure. For these Indians, India shining exists only on television screens. As of the mid-2010s, over 800 million Indians were surviving on less than $2 per day. That was 75% of the population. While recent growth has reduced that share, the absolute number of poor remains high. National surveys continue to find that large numbers of children suffer from malnutrition, lack of schooling, lack of sanitation. Adult literacy sits around 77%, meaning a quarter of all Indian adults are illiterate, most of them among the poor. Now here's what makes this especially obscene. India boasts over 100 billionaires and thousands of millionaires. The top 10% control over 3/4 of the nation's wealth. Luxury malls, fine dining, imported cars, high-end real estate, all booming. Yet in Mumbai, home to billion-dollar skyscraper homes, millions live in Dharavi and other slums packed at 250,000 people per square kilometer. Many lack proper toilets or clean water. In Delhi, homeless families camp on sidewalks within a stone's throw of Parliament. This isn't just economic disparity, it's a Dickensian-level failure of policy and empathy. It mirrors late 18th century France or early Industrial Revolution England, where wealth concentrated in a few hands while masses toiled in squalor. We know how that ended. Historically, a large, impoverished underclass signals internal weakness. No country has become a sustained superpower while holding 1/3 of its population in poverty. The United States and Europe saw poverty rates plummet by the time they emerged as global leaders. China pursued aggressive poverty reduction, lifting hundreds of millions in just decades. India's slower progress suggests economic growth hasn't translated into broad human development. Part of the issue is policy. For years, India focused on industrial and service growth, assuming benefits would trickle down. But without robust investment in rural development, education, health, and job creation for the poor, the trickle became a drip, and corruption means funds meant for the poor vanish or get poorly spent. The consequences are manifold. Economically, it's a waste of potential. Talented youth remain uneducated or undernourished. Socially, it creates volatility. Desperation fuels crime, insurgencies, radical movements. Regions with deepest poverty have seen internal conflicts feed off local grievances. The Maoist insurgency thrives where development died. Extreme inequality frays national unity. Different classes live in entirely separate worlds. In India, people speak of Bharat versus India. Bharat being the poor, traditional hinterland, India being the modern, affluent society. And if they are two countries, that's dangerous because it can become reality. No nation can truly rise if half of it remains on its knees. So what does this all mean? Each of these 7 truths represents a critical stress point where India's grand story could turn from rise to stagnation or collapse. A state that can't guarantee basic public safety loses legitimacy. People stop trusting the government's ability to protect them. Economic progress can't flourish amid lawlessness. A population left unhealthy and uneducated by broken systems cannot become a robust workforce. High GDP on paper means little if millions are too sick to contribute. Corruption that corrodes institutions prevents effective responses to every other problem. Money allocated to fix anything gets siphoned off. Endemic poverty amidst wealth ensures growth is lopsided and fragile. Vast inequalities breed resentment, conflict, crime. Exclusion of women amputates half the nation's capabilities. No society advances to full potential treating its women as second-class citizens. Public defecation and poor sanitation are emblematic of a state that hasn't provided the most fundamental services. It signals a country stuck in a pre-modern trap. Garbage-choked, polluted environments make daily life miserable and act as dead weight on the economy. The best and brightest seek cleaner pastures abroad. If these 7 collapse indicators aren't urgently addressed, India risks a stagnation trap. The country might continue to tick boxes of a rising power, large population, sizable GDP, nuclear arsenal. But it would be a giant with feet of clay. Cities increasingly unlivable, institutions distrusted, society internally divided and demoralized. Public trust erodes as each failure chips away at the idea that tomorrow can be better. The brightest minds emigrate instead of building India, a brain drain born of frustration. Investors lose patience with a country that can't ensure a clean, safe, law-abiding environment. The demographic dividend transforms into demographic liability. Millions of young people unable to find quality jobs, fueling unrest instead of growth. Its trajectory with precedent. Many Latin American countries grew rapidly, then hit the wall due to corruption, inequality, institutional weakness. The middle income trap. India could stall out similarly, never quite reaching developed nation status despite early promise. None of this is inevitable. India has resources and knowledge to tackle each challenge. Numerous reports detail what needs to be done. There are bright spots. Some states have better safety records, near universal sanitation, empowered women, curbed corruption in certain domains. The task is elevating those successes to national scale. It requires visionary leadership, bureaucratic accountability, and a cultural shift among citizens to demand higher standards. Essentially, India must stop accepting these ugly truths as normal. The lesson of history: civilizations that rise confront their weaknesses. They don't sweep them under the rug. America's progressive era took on corruption, labor exploitation, urban squalor through reforms. Western Europe post-World War II rebuilt with focus on welfare and equity. East Asian economies invested heavily in education, health, infrastructure alongside market growth. India's test is now. The coming decades will reveal whether it can overcome these 7 deep-rooted challenges or whether they'll combine to choke off the country's future. So, what do you think? Can India overcome its own cultural collapse? Or is this ancient civilization, for all its talk of destiny, forever stuck between potential and reality? A giant weighed down by the ugliness it refused to fix. Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you want more brutal truths about nations on the edge, hit subscribe, because we're just getting started.